So we formed a committee at Whātapaka called Te Puuaha Manuka, and our office was the boot of Nāneko's car. We got our marae people together, 23 marae, in the area of Waiōhua, and we taught each other. And then we read in the classified information of the New Zealand Herald where people were asking for a permit to pollute. That's what we called it. Today they call it resource consents. And we'd go in buses. So we would often have a couple of buses turn up from the 23 marae.
E te kuia rongonui, te rangatira, e mihi ana ki a koe I tēnei wā, me te mōhio anō, ko koe te tihi o ngā puku mahi, hei arahi, hei poipoi I ngā whakaaro, mō ngā tini kaupapa kei Wainganui te iwi. Nō reira, ka nui te mihi rawa atu ki a koe. Thank you for joining this kōrero to bring together some of your reflections about the settlement, those early years during the Trust Board days when various claims were being formed and you played quite a leading role. So I'd really like to ask you to reflect on those early claims to the Tribunal and what you believe you were trying to help achieve for the greater purpose.
Kia ora Nanaia. Really, I have to go back a bit to my grandfather, my grandmother, whenua in Tribunal, Kirkwood. He would receive a lot of visitors in their whare. At the time that I'm talking about, he was receiving people like Maturata and others, Ngāti Whātua, and people from Hauraki. And then I learned in later years that he was one of the first Tainui Trust Board members. And of course, with all the visitors that came into the whare, like Mere Taka's husband, there was quite a lot of tears. And we were allowed as youngsters to sit and listen but not speak. And it was always about Raupatu, what had been lost around the rohe of Waiōhua, you know, it's Tamaki Makuru and all the hapu of Waiōhua and Waikato as well. So we got an earful of this and we felt all the tears of Ngāti Tamo through that rangatira Witaka. And later on, as history has shown us, his son, we became the secretary in latter years of the Tainui Trust Board. Anyway, getting back to the Manuka harbour, my grandparents lived metres away from the Onehunga beach of the Manuka harbour. So I was brought up eating tuatua and pipi. And over the years with the freezing works at Southdown and another one that was in Penrose there, they used to discharge raw their effluent into the Mangere Inlet. And then coming forward in time with that in my psyche, you know, the anguish and the tears and knowledge of what was lost. I remember when I was 16, my father went to Rotorua with my grandfather, his father. They read the paper, and in the paper was letters to the editor. And his 16-year-old daughter, me, had written a letter to the editor about honouring the Treaty of Waitangi. I was 16 years old, and they printed it. And my father said, "My God, we got to go home, Pop. What has this girl done?"
Your political activism was shaped as a result of a number of experiences and people that you were around as well.
And in the Wairua, they fed me all this information and the tears and stories of Kaumatu, who's since passed away before I was 21 even Ngāti Whātua, you know, with their problems, who incidentally is just as much Waikato as anything else. It was the Pero that put them there where they are. When they were on the flat, he moved them there. I just wanted to make that clear. And of course, those tupuna of these leaders of today of Ngāti Whātua, I've seen them come and go into Grandpa's house. Anyway, Nāneko Manhine, when my father died and got buried at Whātapaka Urupa, well, he really wanted to go to St. James, to the marae, you know, Ngāti Mahuta Urupa, because that's my family on my father's side, Ngāti Mahuta. My nana is buried at, Nana Torongo is buried at St. James. Of course, what's Ngāti Mahuta? And Grandpa wanted to be with her. When Grandpa died and he laid in state at Te Puuaha, people got in his ear. And Mam said, Tarakini Tatarangikahu. During his life, because there's two families of Kirkwoods, the first marriage and the second marriage. The second marriage, you had your grandfather all his life. In death, he goes back to the first family, Whātapaka. And, you know, that cut across, one would think, a bond between the harbour. But we were still close to the harbour because of the estuary, Whātapaka. Anyway, it was there that Nāneko came to visit me. And she, I didn't know she was, at that time, being urban Māori. Mm-hmm. She knocks on the door, this woman from Māori Affairs, and she says, oh, I'm your whenua, Ngāti Tata. And it started.
Well, can I take you back to the Manuka claim and the hearing at Ihumātao Marae?
And that what?
At Ihumātao, at Makuru Marae, when they had the tribunal hearing there.
Oh, yes.
There was a sense at the time that the tribunal process and the claim would help shape, inform the thinking of the trust board in terms of Raupatu and other things, even though it was focused on the harbour.
That's right. My mate at the hearing was my young cousin to Orana, and I helped him write his first submission. He was 17 for the Manuka Harbour Tribunal hearing. And in the submission, addressing the claim of Nāneko Manhine, who did it on behalf of the people of the Puuaha Manuka, which is quite a modern name that Te Rangikahu gave during the fundraising for Kimiora. The region she named Te Puuaha Manuka, bringing the people in one cluster for fundraising purposes. So Nāneko used that name, but in fact it was a rohe o Waiaohua, okay? And she shared after some years, and then when I was enticed to Huakina, and actually that's your dad's fault, I went to him for a reference because I wanted to work at Māori Affairs because I promised my nana I would try and work there. And he did write the reference, but he said, I don't want you working there. I want you need to work for your people. That's your father. Nāneko came to Onehunga with Julie Wade, knocked on the door with a message from your father. You have to go to Huakina. I was already working at Huakina voluntary, but you're going to be paid full time. You're not going to Māori Affairs. So, and it was just before that incident that Nāneko said to me, you need to make a submission on behalf of my family, you know, because we were brought up right on the harbour like many other families of Makuru Marae and Puuaha. And they decided to have the hearing at Makuru Marae. That's when Joe Wilson was alive. He was the rangatira at the time, plus a board member.
At the time of Joe, there was Joe Wilson, there was Mahia,
Yes.
There was yourself, Julie, Nāneko. All that work around the Manuka claim and the harm to the harbour.
Yes.
That really did start to form the thinking around an environmental conscience.
Yes.
And a team and kaitiakitanga. And it wasn't present in the trust board prior to that time. So Huakina was seen as the expert kind of group of people.
They only had scholarship money, and all the thinking was on that and then your dad went overseas to, was it Oxford? And that's when the world was turned upside down. He came back to Waikato, and then the Raupatu corridor started.
The environmental thinking from Huakina and under the leadership of the likes of Koro Joe.
Yes, that started it.
That did start it.
Yes, it started the whole motu to rethink about who they are, because we found it, Nāneko and I, we found it very distressing that our people were becoming more and more, I can be quite straight here, colonised. And in particular, our people in the urban areas. I mean, none of us had the reo, and hardly in Onehunga, only our grandparents, if we were lucky, some of us. So, we frantically did research, and we went to Maori Affairs and did a copy of every minute book that discussed any take within the rohe of Waiōhua. And that equipped us with waihi tapu knowledge, not being aware that archaeologists, even what that meant, until we started to teach ourselves through association and going to local government.
So the relationship with Auckland Council and Watercare to clean up the harbour or to address,
Yes.
all the paru going into the harbour. Can you recall some of those discussions and
Well, they didn't even know there was such a word as kaitiaki. They didn't even know who tangata whenua were, let alone mana whenua. They heard of Waikato in Tamaki Makaurau. Ngāti Whātua that word wasn't used much, let alone Waiōhua. And those big iwis, they knew that. But that's all they knew. And all they were concerned about was actually following the legislation from government, which in those days was the Town and Country Planning Act. Okay? And it referred to, which took years to acknowledge the spiritual values of Māori. And that was through Huakina Development Trust. In fact, it was Huakina Development Trust, but in those days it was originally called Te Puuaha ki Manuka as a committee. And it was Rangi Mahuta's grandmother who came to a hui at Whātapaka because of our concern for the Manuka harbour. She said, no, not just the Manuka. There's a Waikato the awa. And you Manuka people, don't forget us, Te Puuaha. So we formed a committee at Whātapaka called Te Puuaha ki Manuka, and our office was the boot of Nāneko's car. We got our marae people together, 23 marae, in the area of Waiōhua. And we taught each other. And then we read in the classified information of the New Zealand Herald where people were asking for a permit to pollute. That's what we called it. Today they call it resource consents. So we decided we would go. It took us a while to find out where these hearings were, and we'd go in buses. That's how active it was. So we would often have a couple of buses turn up from the 23 marae, mostly full of kaumātua and a few young people, and we would object. And then we would pick up all the lawyers' papers that were there, representing the developers, the polluters, and we learned the lingo.
Yeah, there was a lot of lingo around. Can I maybe fast forward to the Coal Corp case? You were present at the Coal Corp case and were very strongly involved in the debriefs and the pre-briefs and how the team would prepare themselves to go to court and then how they would debrief afterwards. What can you remember about that time preparing for the Coal Corp case?
Well, I remember it being an all-day, all-night affair for months preparing, because especially for Huntley coals. But it started before that, so, we ended up in the High Court. But we were counting on a complete trust of our people. And we took the masses with us. And that was a result of trust, because we never, ever held back. If any question was asked, they always got an answer, no matter how delicate it was. That's why I'm here tonight for Shane Solomon's This Is Your Life, because he was just a young fella. And he's just one of many, as you said, that stood up on different stages, especially Turangawawa, and took all the bullets.
He was a young person and he was lucky to the extent that he had strong queer and women around him who could guide him, as well as strong males, but mainly women.
Yes.
You were one of those women, and you never ever held back in terms of your opinion, or if you felt that there needed to be more robust discussion. Many of us witnessed that and were nurtured by that model of strength. And I just wanted to see whether there were people who grew you that we could maybe think about and remember in ways that, this is the whakapapa of leadership that actually grew leaders, that grew villages of other leaders to make a contribution for the settlement. I mean, undoubtedly, yourself and Nānaku, you had such strong personalities. You had to have your wits about you if they were going to take you on, and, around the boardroom or anywhere else.
Well, actually, Kari, I think we got a real problem today. The aptitude, if I can speak frankly. I'm not that impressed with the leadership attributes of our men. I'm personally, I was really distressed when I found out about Three Waters, for example. I mean, to me, you were one of the leaders, I had great hopes. And
maybe if I insert a memory, for example, Nana Iti and Nana Miretaka, and their style of female leadership. And then it was almost like there was a style of female leadership for the marae, a style for the boardroom, a style in front of the crown. And they all worked. They were all female energy roles of leadership. I mean, yourself and
I'm going to share this with you. I don't know if you were ever told, but I recall when Koro Wetare wanted you in the Labour Party. I don't know if you know about this, but I'm going to talk about it. Most of the time, Nanny Mere and Auntie Iti, we like that. Eh? They were my mentors. Anyway, I got a call from your dad on Friday, late afternoon, to come. Can I come to Hobobri? He got a take. And it was about whānau. And I went, oh. I said, who's whānau? He said, our whānau. And I went, okay. So then I got another call from Auntie Mary. Can you pick up Auntie Iti and I? Because we got a call from Robert to go to Hui. I said, oh, it must be the same meeting. Anyway, Robert and Mum at Hobobo in his office, or the lobby just next to his office. We sat in there and he mentioned the desire of Koro Wetare for you to be in the Labour Party as, be a member of Parliament. I said, oh, really? And Mary and Etty, and I said, what does Charlie Dindui say? Oh, she's a bit worried about that. No. And he said, so I'm asking you for your thoughts. And based on what Tariki Nui said, they said no, both of them. Then he asked me, what do you think? I said, well, it's not her fault what house she was born in. I said, I'm all for it. I said, I total 100%, Roberts. She's got the goods. And they were hitting me. You heard, are you deaf? Didn't you hear ma'am say, because of, to protect you, they didn't want any harm to come to you. That was her reason, ma'am said, nothing but love. And I said, no. You can't hold her back just because of you, Robert, being a brother to our Queen. No, there's no fear.
Well,
So there are rangatira, like we were talking about tonight, and it depends on what the kōrero can change, just like that, depending who you're talking to or what's been said to you, eh? But you touched on it. When it comes to principles, you've got to uphold, and integrity, and fairness, and I said, she has a destiny. Let her at least, let's see where it takes us.
Well, where it takes us, when the final decision was made to complete the sign the settlement, the clauses that left out the West Coast harbours and the Waikato River, Maioro and Waioroa, was there much debate around the Trust Board table about that part of it? Because, obviously there was specific interests that you were involved in that were impacted. And I'm curious to know whether there was much discussion about leaving it out for another time.
Well, there was at home at Waioroa, because we wanted to do our own claim. And there's only a few people that I can really rely on, and my son-in-law's one of them. But you need more than one or two for this claim. It's big biggies. And because it's so polluted, and the fact that Waikato came in through the Manuka harbour claim of Nanekos, that the Puuaha ki Manuka, to be specific, claim. And yes, one thing led to another, because in my submission, I listed all the Raupatu blocks within Waioroa, including Waikato, how much they lost. That was in my submission. And of course, Robert and the Centre for Māori Studies were there, and like I hoped he would, he did. The staff all went back to Hamilton, bang, 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 and brought out all these fabulous submissions on behalf of Waikato for total support for us.
So would it be an accurate statement to say that at the time, the best way to preserve the interest was leaving the claims out in order to fight another day, but also to allow the harbours peoples to gather themselves to be able to lead their own claims? Is that an accurate statement, or it was
Well, what I've told the harbour consultation groups that have come around, because we've had the chance to speak, and I've already told Tuku, because he came to visit me, that I had no problem with Waikato and a claim for Manuka harbour. But I also told our people at the last consultation round, I know that you hapu trusts, you're thinking about putting a claim in over the harbour, which they have every right, because they're mana whenua groups like Ngāti Tamo, Ngaitai, etc., Ngāti Tiata. But there comes a time when you have to, and I don't like the word which the Crown has been throwing around, organising these clusters, what do they call it? All the different mana whenua groups that have an interest in the one area. Anyway, I said to the people, it's okay to put your counterclaims in, but if you do that, you make sure your interests are number one for the taonga, not for yourself, as a trustee of this hapu or that hapu.
My last question is really your hope for the next 30 years in terms of kaitiakitanga and what that should be looking like.
Well, short term, I want this government out next election, absolutely. I can't stand that Seymour. He's absolutely racist. I think he's a Don Brash man. And I worry about the influence that Seymour's getting from overseas. And
but within the iwi, in terms of the vision going forward, the next 30 years, your hope for kaitiakitanga, what would that look like?
I'm 80 years old now and I don't get around much. I haven't got a car. But I would like to see our iwi, all hapu, whether it's Waiōhua or in Waikato, take seriously kaitiakitanga, but in particular because of what's coming. Climate change is already here, but we've already been hit at whātapaka. Part of our urupā has fallen into one of the whare. Sewage in our dining room and our kitchen from the septic tanks, because the creek runs behind our kitchen, to the degree that, we're having real hassles with one another because it's emotional. People have grown up believing it's going to be their marae forever. And the water in my whare, my bedroom, the water splashing against my bedroom wall outside. And the water splashes against the dining room of whātapaka. So I was really concerned, and as it turned out, and our king died on the day of the pokai, we didn't have to worry about that because we haven't got a resource consent. And not very often I will talk to local government against Māori wants or needs. But this time I said, the land is not big enough and able to receive the tickle. Because our pokai, because we're the closest to Tamaki Makaurau, anyone that's interested, Māori, they're there on our pokai, 700 to 800. So, Nanaya, integrity, that's something I want to see, and I see it eroding amongst our people. I want it back, like in the times of our old people. They had integrity. I don't see much of that today. That worries me. That's a very basic thing, but it worries me. And I don't know why that is, and I'm picking most of all its temptations of the consultancy world in kaitiakitanga and being offered money and bribes and so on. I've seen it. I don't like it. And I've said so, and I will. Doesn't matter where it is, whether it's on the marae or publicly or Facebook. If somebody asks a question, I will answer it and say I don't like it. Stop receiving bribes for development.
Well, on that note, e mihi ana kia koe, mō tēnei wāhanga kia noho ki te ata titiro meki, ki ngā kaupapa matua o mua, ki te anga whakamua nō hoki. Nō reira mihi ana kia koe. Thank you for your time. We're lucky to have shared you for this time. And we appreciate your kōrero.
I might probably said a lot of things I should not, but what the hell? I'm taking the opportunity. Well, I got it. And I hope you're going to try again, babe. I was so distressed.
No, I've done my dash, but you've earned the right to have a view that is unedited.
It didn't turn me, and I thought, boy, is ignorant buggers.
No, thank you. Awesome.